It's time to talk about a cornerstone of democracy, local news. Welcome to a conversation about the state of rural community journalism. I'm Kyle Munson, president of the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation, a new nonprofit with a mission to ensure long-term access to accurate local news and investigative reporting. We're helping to maintain community newsrooms that know and treat their audiences as their neighbors. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity to sit down today with three experienced Western Iowa editors who epitomize this grassroots journalism. Art Cullen, editor of the Storm Lake Times. Lorena López, editor of LaPrensa, based in Denison. And Doug Burns, editor of the Carroll Times Herald. So thanks to all of you for being here today. This is such an important conversation, and you are such important figures in all of your communities. So I'm going to start by asking some questions to get the conversation going. You know, the first thing I want to ask is a simple question. And Lorena, I'll start with you. In a sentence or less, why did you become a journalist? Why be a journalist?
Well, since I was very young in my home country, Nicaragua, in my young time, I was part of it, of the revolution in there. It was a very popular journalist that he used to make journalists hiding from the government. So his name, Pedro Joaquin Chamorro, and each time that we hear the radio and family hiding from the government, and deny, in the middle of the deny, I hear him to talking about freedom and free of the press. I always said, I want to be like him. And so he was my big inspiration since I was probably 17.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the voice of a journalist talking about the freedom of the press
Yes.
inspired you to follow in his footsteps. Does that speak to you, Art? I mean, what was that first journalist voice that you heard in some way or read?
Well, frankly, the reason I got into journalism, because in college I flunked accounting, and, but I could type 25 words a minute, so I got into journalism. But what really turned me on was when I finally got into the program was I graduated in the first, or I got in the first post-Watergate class. At that time, it was journalism was the second largest major at the University of St. Thomas, behind business, an all-men's college. And it was the Watergate era, and when Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein essentially brought down Richard Nixon. And Carl Bernstein is still my hero today.
Wow. So Doug, we have, hearing the influential voice of a journalist, we have kind of being educated into journalism. I think you come at this from a different angle, right? The family trade.
Correct, yeah. So I was adopted as a baby in Cedar Rapids into the family that operates the Carroll Times Herald. So I'm a fourth generation journalist, so I grew up in that type of environment where issues of the day were talked about, and then it wasn't just my family. My uncle, my mom had a profound influence. My good friends today here, Art and Lorena, continue to have that influence. But I had the privilege of working for Michael Gartner, as did Art. But I'd really have to pinpoint Bob Beck, the owner of the newspaper in Centerville. And of course, Centerville doesn't have a newspaper anymore. And Bob and his father, Jesse, it was actually more Jesse because Bob was pretty young then, but they actually took on the Ku Klux Klan. Centerville's, close to the border of Missouri. So just listening to the stories about, their efforts and how they changed the community. And then Bob later went on to do a lot of economic development. So that's what I try to, do with our paper, is make sure that we're, neither the blind booster or the common skull, that we're lifting where we can lift and helping people row together to keep our rural communities strong. And then telling the hard truths when we have to do that.
Yeah. Well said. Local journalists on the front lines of community. So that leads me to my second question. Art, maybe I'll start with you on this. So what does community journalism really mean to you?
Well, community journalism, I think, is distinct from some other forms of newspaper journalism, mainly metro newspapers. And I think what makes them distinct is that we're community builders. That we set out with that mission. And I think maybe at larger newspapers, you're maybe more detached or, objective. But in Storm Lake, it's, you know, we see ourselves as a mirror of the community, good and bad, and at the same time, I think we have a role of being a builder of community, and I think that's our principal role, is trying to bring people together.
Yeah. Lorena, community journalism, how do you respond to that? How do you feel the role of a community journalist?
Well, I think that is the base. Community journalism is the base, the fundament of every rural, especially rural community, where talking about the community that I represent, the Latino community, community journalism is to get together neighbors, to get to know the neighbor who I am living, you know, next to. Community journalism is to go to those quinceañeras, to baptism, to cover those kind of activities and express the culture of that group, to a general community and know one each other better.
Yeah, you're not just there for the fires or the emergencies, but the family milestones and all those moments.
It's very, very important, to have that contact with the community in general. And not just Latinos, the rest of the culture in that small community, because we go to shop to Hy-Vee, to Fairway, we go to the churches, we see one each other in parade, and we know who we are and how we can. For the Latino community, it's very, very important to show part of our culture and show to the Anglo community and the general community what to live in community is about.
Yeah, well put. So you grew up in community journalism.
Right.
Has your notion of that changed in any particular way throughout your life and career?
Fundamentally, it's the same, Kyle, but I'd say the difference is now that I think in many respects we're the last refuge for collective truth. A lot of what we print in our paper, whether it's obits, whether it's the coverage of wedding announcements, city council meetings, people empirically know that to be true because they were there at the meeting, they were there at the game, they know somebody who passed away. There are 1 to 2 degrees of separation in communities our size. So then when we have to tell the hard truths and we have to get into difficult and important issues like the coronavirus vaccinations, certain rougher political topics, I think people are willing to digest and absorb information from us in a way they aren't from other sources. So we're able to, we're one of those last institutions that I think can break through the social media's algorithms and actually put truth and commonality back into our communities.
Yeah, well put. So let me stick with you just for another minute here, Doug. Kind of extending your thoughts there, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you fix about journalism today, about local news and this journalism that we've been talking about?
If I had a magic wand, the first thing I would do is get rid of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which allows social media to be considered platforms, whereas we're liable, we're considered a publisher, and we should be, and that's the we should be responsible for what's printed in the content. So we're publishers, and we have to compete with social media, and they are platforms, and a lot of our readers I don't think really understand that, and a lot of our older readers in particular, they grew up absorbing content that was vetted by copy editors, by a city editor, by an executive editor. So when they see something on Facebook or they see something in other social media, they assume that any printed or published word has gone through a vetting process. And so I think we need some more media literacy so people understand that when we print something, it's vetted. Most of the time on social media, it is not.
That's a good point. It's not a level playing field economically or culturally or legally at this point. So Lorena, your magic wand, what would you fix about journalism in a second, if you could? Today.
I will be agree 100% with my colleague Doug here. I will fix change social media. I will make social media responsible for don't inform the right way to the community, especially in moments like we just came from the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, in the Latino community, social media creates so much noises, you know, it was so much confusion, but at the same time, it put me as a journalist that we still be in life as a small newspapers, as a small as a journalist in small communities, because it was so many times that Latinos, talking about my target, saw a news, you know, a news in social media, and I received a lot of phone calls. Oh, Lorena, what do you know about that the vaccine can leave you blind, or the vaccine going to give you sterilized, you know? So that proved one more time to me and give me the huge, big satisfaction that even when social media is attacking the truth, is attacking the fact, attacking the relation that we have with our communities, our members in our communities, the community is still believing in real journalism.
Yeah. So, Art, social media is not having a good day here in the conversation. Would your magic wand also involve that or something else?
Well, it's related to my magic wand. I wish I'd hit everybody at sleep and they'd wake up realizing that freedom isn't free, and that to have a free flow of accurate information, you know, people have to pay for that. And, you know, my son eats. He's a reporter, and he needs a paycheck. And you know, our editors need paychecks. And people have come to believe through social media and the internet generally that information wants to be free. And well, then that information is likely coming from a guy in Macedonia sitting in a basement in his underwear, issuing propaganda for the Russians. You know, in the Carroll Times Herald or LaPrensa or the Storm Lake Times or the Des Moines Register that this is accurate information and it has some value, and $1 isn't too much to ask.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us and supporting independent local journalism in your own community. For more information about the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation, please visit our website at westerniowatournalismfoundation.com. Sign up there for our newsletter and also follow us across social media. Please remember, there's no community without community journalism.